Here are all the powers in Supervive explained. There is a lot going on in this game, so having heard what all powers do, I believe will help you immensely when you decide which one you're going to pick up and when. I'm also going to give you some combos, tips and tricks, and details on how to play some of the more advanced powers in the game. Let's begin. First, the lowest tier powers. Those are the white ones. There are 4 of them in total, and they all give minor passive buffs. The tear gives you mana regen, the hourglass gives you ability haste, the fang gives you omnivamp, and the boots gives you movement speed. Put these on any hunter for a small boost in stats. Moving on to the green powers, starting with a mana cloud. Using this spawns a blue cloud that restores a bunch of mana over time to anyone who's in it. It lasts for a long time, and it's great for a healer or any other hunter that might run into mana problems early game. Then we have the tree costume. This power allows you to become a slowly moving tree on a low cooldown. Taking damage breaks this effect. Money Tree Granade. This throws out a sapling that instantly grows into a tree. It has 3 charges, and destroying the trees drops money, and the money dropped increases the longer the tree has been planted. Friend of the Forest. Having this power gives the holder mana regen while standing close to a tree. And now we come to our first fun synergies. This passive works on all trees, including the ones you create from other powers. Being a tree, using the tree costume for instance, will also activate this passive. Forestwalking. This allows the hunter to freely walk through trees. And the best part about this power is that players cannot see other players when they're inside a tree. Combine this with, for instance, Money Tree Grenade, and you've got a kind of stealth on demand. Next up is Throwing Axe. This fires out a projectile that deals a bit of damage. It has a pretty low cooldown, and if this projectile hits a tree, the tree falls, dealing a lot more damage and stunning enemies hit. Combine this with other tree powers to surprise enemies with a long-range stun out of nowhere. On to some non-tree powers. Ghillie Suit. This lets you turn into a bush that moves slowly. Same power as tree costume, but a bush instead. Nutty. Green Thumbs. Using this power instantly grows a bunch of bushes all around you. This is commonly combined with Berry Eater, a power we'll get to later, and the cooldown is quite low, so if you want to hold down an area and make it risky for enemies to approach by creating a big field of bushes, you easily could. Scuba Gear. This is another passive, and it makes you invisible when you're in water as long as you're out of combat. Moving through water normally slows you down, but with Scuba Gear, you will move at normal speed. Instant Vive. This power lets you instantly create 2 cooked food and 1 full restore. If you use this while standing in water, you create double the amount, and the cooldown of the power is also cut in half.
Cut the onion in half.
Emergency Platform. This is an interesting power that lets you create a platform when you use it over the abyss or hazardous terrain. Touching ground on this platform instantly refills your glider fuel, and on top of that, a little fun fact, if you're carrying a base camp with you, you can actually put it down on this platform to create a little hover base that remains when the platform disappears. Sometimes useful in those late game circles. Jammer. This is a straightforward power. As long as anyone on your team is carrying this, it passively blocks your whole team from being spotted by UAVs. The sweatier the lobby, the more useful I'd say this power is. Creep Cloner. This is a fun one. This is basically your Pokeball. You throw it out on any monster that isn't a boss monster, and it'll be captured. You can now reactivate the ball to summon that monster, and it'll attack enemies around you and help you. Pro tip is to use this power to capture one of the floating jellyfish around the map. This will turn the power into a reusable launch pad for your whole team. Fishing Pole. Fishing Pole works like this. Hold down to aim, release to cast, hit the water, and wait. When the floater dips below the surface, click again and you'll get a consumable. The more fun way to use this power is to hook in items that you see lying around on the ground. You can also hit enemy players with this to steal a consumable from them. And the last green power is Burning Core. Activating this creates 3 increasingly larger explosions that deals a burst of damage and leaves behind a fire zone that deals damage over time. This is best used on melee champions that likes to stick to targets in order to pump out a bit more damage. This is also a useful tool for quickly getting rid of terrain like bushes and trees. Now, let's talk about the blue powers. Starting with the 3 different touches that are in the game. I know one of them isn't blue, but it made sense to put it here, okay? These are all passives that work the same way. When the holder of this power touches an ally, it'll buff the holder and that ally. The yellow one gives them both a short burst of speed, the blue one restores mana, and the green one heals both targets. Usually support hunters pick these up, and I would say they are particularly good on Eluna, since she wants to use her dash through allies anyways. Next we have Rally. When you activate this, you give yourself and nearby allies a burst of movement speed that decays over 5 seconds. Good for a little bit of extra mobility if you, for instance, want to engage a fight. Additionally, this cleanses any slows when used and makes everybody hazard immune, meaning, for instance, that you're not slowed down while running in water. Delicate Mana Battery. If you have full HP, you regenerate mana. Another good item for healers or characters that can in other ways self-heal. Delicate Barrier, another passive. When you're at full HP, you take reduced damage. What's important here is that this effect lingers for 0.5 seconds after taking the initial damage, meaning that the first burst from several sources will be reduced if they land simultaneously. Perfect item for a tank that wants to go in, but also any character that has a free power slot. Regenerative Armor. This is a passive that slowly regenerates your armor's durability as long as you haven't taken damage in the last 4 seconds. Note, slowly. It's very slow. The Little Cook. Using this power summons a little cook that creates a total of 8 consumables over 32 seconds. From my testing, the loot can be either a Vive brew, a Hyper Vive, a launch pad, or a pile of gold. Perhaps there's some rare thing I haven't seen. Let me know in the comments if you've gotten something else. Now to some of the good ones. Remote Laser. This deploys a laser turret that deals a lot of damage to both enemies and allies. Learned that the hard way. If you press interact, you can slowly move around the laser and adjust its angle. And if you hold down interact, you'll pick it up so that you can immediately deploy it again. This power is great for area control if you try and put it down in tight places where you know the enemy's gotta be. The Chonker. This power summons a big rolling cat that deals damage and stuns the first enemy it hits. The stun duration is longer the further the cat travels. You can use this power to fish for an engage with a stun, or you can use it to push up on enemies as the cat blocks projectiles. Note, however, that the enemy can destroy it if they deal enough damage. Tree Prison. This is a pretty long range ability that spawns a ring of trees around the target location. Enemies trapped inside it are pulled towards the center of it. This power can really catch people off guard and make them panic, and there are many ways to make plays with it. The most obvious one being using the throwing axe right after for an easy stun. Bush Boar. This summons a monster that lasts for 60 seconds. It will charge at enemies in its range, and if it hits, it deals damage and stuns them. If this power is cast from a bush, the monster will instantly charge, making it way less predictable for enemies, and the cooldown of the power is also halved. Try and combine this power with the Ghillie Suit in order to easily be able to surprise enemies with the instant charge out of nowhere. Bushwhacker. This passive power gives you a burst of movement speed and stealth when you leave a bush while out of combat, and this too can be combined with other bush powers like the Ghillie Suit in order to make it less situational and easier to proc. Iron Fist by Bishop. This power is a melee attack that takes a short while to wind up and then hits the enemy, knocking them back and dealing damage. If the target is knocked into a wall, they are also stunned. Additionally, this power can be used on some terrain, like trees. This will send a tree flying away, and if it hits an enemy, they're gonna be stunned. And of course, you can combine this with, for instance, the Money Tree Grenade in order to create something of a long-range stun tool. Pretty neat. Raven Spy. This power has 2 stacks. When you press it, you send out a bird that lands and provides vision for your team. If you put them higher up, or specifically in a tree, they provide significantly more vision. You can also activate the ravens by holding down the key. This will send them flying towards your cursor location. If they collide with an enemy, they deal damage. Bloodstone. This power instantly trades 400 of your HP for a 400 health shield that lasts for 5 seconds. During this time, you gain 13% Omnivamp. Activate this power when you've taken a good amount of damage and just before you're about to unload a bunch of damage yourself in order to heal back to full. A quick note is that you can't kill yourself while activating this. So if you have less than 400 HP, you trade whatever you have for a 400 health shield, meaning that you can also use this power as a last resort to potentially survive the little bit of burst that would maybe kill you. Mortar! Ah, the Mortar. This power is a lot of fun. Press and hold in order to gradually aim further and further away from you. When you release, you fire out a projectile that deals a pretty chunky 750 damage in an area around it. This power has a very low cooldown, so you can use it often and mid-fights, and it has a whopping 5,000 range. Not the best power in the game, but certainly one of my personal favorites. Rescue Turtle. You throw out a turtle that stays on the ground until the timer runs out. If an ally jumps on it, touches it, either way it sounds awful. That ally gets a big heal and is quickly dragged to your location. This power is pretty wacky in that it has infinite range and goes through walls. If you have good mobility, with abilities or otherwise, you can definitely pull out some creative plays with this. Or just put it on your healer, let them save you from a pinch. Anti-mobility field. You throw out an electric gate of sorts to target location, and it lasts for 20 seconds. Enemies that walk through it gets briefly slowed, but enemies that uses a dash through it get stunned. Simple as that. Finally, homing missile. Did you ever play Worms? This is straight up the same homing missile. Click the power once to mark a target location, and then hold down to fire the missile. Hold longer to initially give the missile more velocity. After a short while, it'll activate its homing capabilities and start zooming towards the target location. It then deals damage based on how long it traveled. You can definitely get fancy with this, but you can also use it point blank in order to just deal a bit more damage. Time for the purple powers. Now it gets interesting. Starting off with a stealth cloak. As the name suggests, this power gives you stealth at the cost of continuously draining your mana. This is a very useful power for anyone that likes to engage and take enemies by surprise. Reactivating it or firing out an ability or an auto attack will break stealth. When you're in stealth, pay close attention to the circle around your character. This is an indication of how close you can be to enemies before they get alerted with a sound effect and a pretty accurate visualization of your character. Two-way teleporter. When you press the button of this power, don't panic. The game is gonna zoom way out so you can pick a spot for your teleporter. You can cancel this by quickly using your glider. After a spot has been chosen, the teleporter cooks for a bit. Once it's completed, you can step inside the circle, press the power again, and everything inside the circle will get teleported to the picked location. Note that everything will be teleported. This includes enemies, items, and even base camps. And of course, as the name suggests, it's a two-way teleporter, so everything at the picked location will swap places to your location. Grappling Hook. This lets you cover a great distance quickly by hooking onto terrain. The cooldown is pretty low and the range is nice and high. Great tool for running away and engaging on enemies. If you hit an enemy directly with a hook, they become rooted for a short while, which makes it easier for you to, for instance, follow up with some more CC. A pro tip is that you can hook onto your ally as well in order to build up a huge amount of momentum and travel even greater distances. Hover Wings. This power summons a pair of wings that lets you fly for 3 seconds with increased movement speed but reduced directional control. This is a safer way to traverse the abyss when enemies are near, since you can't get spiked like when you're using your glider. Note that you can use your spells and auto attacks while flying. Also, like many things in Supervive, these wings builds on the momentum you've got, so pair it with mobility spells and other tools in order to cover great distances with them. Berry Eater. This passive power will make it so that you automatically eat any bush you walk over. Eating a bush will heal you for a percentage of your max HP over a few seconds. This power stacks, so eating several bushes in quick succession will heal you more. Tanks commonly pair this power with green thumbs, making the bushes you spawn a nice and reliable way to regain your health. If you're using this combo, remember, the cooldown of green thumbs is very low, so if you're planning on holding down an area for a while, make sure you keep spawning bushes for you to consume later on in order to heal. Tactical Nuke. Using this power calls down a nuke. The range is pretty long and it takes 5 seconds before it lands and deals a crap ton of damage. It also leaves a fire zone that deals damage over time. This is one of the best powers for late game area control. It can also be used to quickly take on bosses and harder mobs. Be careful though, because this power also damages you and your allies. Guardian Angel. This passive makes it so that you revive allies 60% faster from Wisp form. Now that alone is extremely good, but additionally, the wielder only has to touch the Wisp once, and then they can move away and the Wisp will keep resurrecting. Thus, this power is good on anyone in your team, but obviously goes hand in hand with the healer and support characters. Note that enemies stepping on a Wisp that is about to res will interrupt this effect. Health Pack. This power throws out a health pack that you or an ally can pick up in order to get a strong heal over time. This power has 2 stacks, and if you consume the health pack while airborne, you also get a little boost upwards, kind of like a mini jump pad. You can use this to scale high grounds you wouldn't be able to reach otherwise, and the mobility spell of Hudson and Celeste greatly benefits from this, as they both get a huge boost in momentum when they use their ability over the health pack. Bungee Shot. This power fires out a projectile, much like Grappling Hook, but if it connects to a target, you can fire out a second one. If the 2 targets hit our environment, you create a bouncing ball in between them that lasts for a while. This you can traverse by jumping over it. If one of the targets hit is an enemy, it'll be pulled towards the environment, turning it into a hook of sorts. Now, if both targets are enemies, they are pulled together and stunned. I personally love running this for its hook potential. It feels very hard for enemies to predict it and dodge it. Give it some practice and I think you'll love it too. Airblast. Straightforward power here. This will push away all enemies in front of you. Pretty short cooldown on it too. I like running this on ranged characters to give yourself an extra tool to get those melees off of you. Sand Wall. Also pretty straightforward. This summons a wall that blocks projectiles and slows enemies that pass through it. Great tool for running away, but perhaps even greater to have on someone looking to initiate and push up on an enemy team. Rubber Raccoon. Now here's a fun one. This sends out a raccoon that steals all items in a target area and brings it back to you in a chest. Takes a while to channel, so you can't really do it while in a hectic fight, but if there are enemies where the raccoon hits, it'll take some of their money and consumables. The most common way to utilize this is to use it on a vault in order to joint the loot without having to go through the process of opening it. Abyss Specialist. There is no surprise that a lot of players have this as their favorite power. This makes it so that your first mobility spell used while over the abyss gets its cooldown completely refreshed. This does not work on ultimates. What this means is that you can now double dash on hunters that shouldn't be able to, as long as the first dash is over the abyss. Yeah, I will tell them that. If you land in between each dash, you can keep dashing all over the place. Definitely very strong, since Abyss is everywhere in Supervive. Yeah, I know, Lewis, I'm telling them. Delicate X-ray goggles. This one lets you spot enemies in fog of war while holding down sneak, which is control if you haven't changed your keybinds. You do, however, need to be at full HP, and the enemies needs to be moving in order for this to work. Note that enemies will be alerted that they are being watched by a little red eye indicator above their heads. Very useful power on a hunter like Kingpin, who can make plays by hooking people that are on the other side of the wall. Fixer. This power gives you the ability to pick up base camps for free instead of the 5,000 gold it usually costs. Plus, picking it up is extremely fast compared to picking it up without the power. I encourage you all to practice playing with this power and bringing a base camp with you into the late game circles. Having vision, slow regen, and armor repair during the extended fights that happens then can be a huge upper hand. Plus, you can always try and drop it on an enemy for that highlight clip.
Base camp captured.
Chonker Cannon. Remember the Chonker? Well, this builds a cannon that lasts for a full minute and keeps firing out chonkers that stuns enemies hit. This power has 2 stacks, so if you can get more than 1 on your team, you can quickly create an area where enemies just cannot fight you. Some things to remember is that the cannon chonkers are way squishier than the regular chonkers, meaning enemies have an easier time destroying them when they're rolling towards them. Plus, the cannon itself can also be destroyed. And finally, the mini chonkers does not bounce on walls like the bigger ones do. And finally, the glider jet. This mobility power has 3 stacks, and using it while gliding gives you a big boost of speed. And as usual, movement stacks in Supervive, so using 3 boosts in quick succession gives you very, very fast speed, while using them separated will offer you more maneuverability and range. This is a solid power overall, and really shines when you're trying to run away from a lost fight. The glider jet also deals a bit of damage to enemies directly behind it when used. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn about the exotic and abyssal powers, I have a separate video for them coming out very soon. If you're lucky, there's a thumbnail on your screen right now that'll take you directly there. There's also a button for a similar video I did explaining what all the hunters do in Supervive. That way you know how to play versus them in a fight. If you found the video helpful, feel free to award me with a like, drop a comment if there was any cool trick that I missed, and subscribe for more Supervive content. I'll see you in the next one. Do it!